So I'm at a point where I think I'm just about ready to stop doing this stuff. It's going to become a busier time for me this time of year. Maybe so I'm going to have to slow down. There's just no way I'm going to be able to keep up the pace that I have. I'm probably not going to be able to finish at least attempting to build everything that I've attempted to build. The circumstances that I find myself in as far as the packages are concerned, I could tell there's a lot of packages that I haven't tried to build that are going to be able to build. That I'll be able to figure out how to get to build. On that subject, there's a complete difference between whether it will build, which is kind of like stage one, and stage two being testing it out. I've done a little bit of that maybe over the last few days on video, and quite frankly, it was really discouraging. Now, just to give you an idea of what's going on here, for the most part, I'm just building things. I'm not really doing a lot of patching. There's a very small fraction of the overall builds that I do in which I make some code changes that I'm wondering whether I did the right thing. I mean, it's a very, very small portion. A lot of the patches that I made actually are probably just headers that I'm including. I mean, there's so many headers that I've included in patches that it makes you, if you look at the look at all the patches, if you were to flip through all the pages of all the patches, you would really, really ask yourself, why the hell hasn't the people that make the operating system, why haven't they done something about this? Because that's where a lot of those patches actually are. I guess I'm going to say a few things that are controversial now. But I haven't been short of controversial things to say, and I haven't been short of things that I think were probably helpful. So there are some really dedicated people to this OS. There are some very skilled people that have spent some time working on this operating system. The unfortunate thing is that I think the end result really isn't turning out to be anything worth writing home about. And I don't like saying that, but that's where things are. And then when I look at the end results of what I have here, it's not just because, you can't really make a simple statement as to why things aren't turning out. It's complicated, but I can talk about some factors that contributed to the less than stellar results that I would like to have had. Now, of course, if I were to spend more time on this, or maybe dedicate a whole other year, I'd probably have a bunch of really good packages, but of this version, but they'd be old by that time. The real point is the number of people we actually have working on this project. We don't have enough. And we don't have any commercial vendors that have come in to say make an office suite or other programs that people want to use, games. You don't go to a lot of websites that sell software and say, here's the version for Haiku. That it's becoming more common on open source, but overall the variety of applications that are available pretty much leaves the end user wanting, and it's things work a lot better and they're a lot easier to get in Linux. I'm also concerned about, even if we had just every app, Unix app that's ever been made available working in Haiku, even if we got to that point, I'm not so sure that we'd even have very good hardware support. Okay, so what are the various factors that have contributed to me saying this isn't really worth my time? And it's come to that because a lot of the apps that I end up building And some of the apps that I've worked really hard to get to just build in the first place seem to have problems because of the way the operating system has been put together. Number one is not having write access to part of the file system. It also doesn't feel like you can do what you want to do with the operating system, and being able to do what you want to do with the operating system doesn't mean that it's going to be difficult to deal with. Those are really two different things. I think some people confuse. If you think it's good news that POSIX isn't going to work out because it isn't going to turn Haiku into Linux, it's a complete fallacy. It means you're not going to have Firefox. It means you're not going to have LibreOffice, and it means you are stuck with Go Be Productive, and so it means there is absolutely no point moving the operating system forward at all. And, just keep it where it is, right? Because at least Go Be Productive will actually work, at least now. We've had times where ABI Word was available for a little while there, or but now everything's screwed up and the developers haven't returned, and I'll try to talk about why the developers haven't returned. For one, there's probably been a lot of packages that the developers that were very skilled and probably worked for months on these things had made but didn't release because they figured out they just didn't work that well. And the reason why they figured out it didn't work that well is because some of our libraries that some of the libraries that we have really aren't libraries that you think they are. And it's too tedious to start your task doing readelfs on every single binary that comes with Haiku and then compare them to the ones in Linux to see whether they're linking to the same things. That would probably be a good thing to do, though. And if a company were ever to start, which I think is probably going to be required, to get a full set of packages, we would probably need a full corporation to come in with a staff of 10 or 20 and work on this for at least a year. And to have them come out high quality, we've never had that kind of even volunteer. And the reason is we don't have shared memory, so a lot of packages need to be built in a custom fashion. Sometimes that also cuts off from us actually being able to build some packages because shared memory doesn't exist in the first place, and it requires shared memory. That includes, as far as I could tell, the GTK apps, GTK2, not 1. So I guess we could build GTK1 apps, but the source for the older applications is eventually going to disappear, and the popular tool sets aren't really going to support them. Which means we get, then we got our own recipes we have to make. I didn't really find Haiku Porter easy or responsive to my attempt to try to use it. The lack of hard links in the file system, our rigorous adherence to POSIX to a fault, are not including some variables that aren't POSIX, but are very standard amongst the open source apps that are out there, that are even part of building blocks of apps that people want to use. We've made it difficult for our own developers to actually build those things, because we have to go and sub out variables because we have chosen we're not going to use certain variables, and we're going to use some, we're not going to use the other. A lot of time we have the header, but we either refused or don't want to, or haven't thought to use redirects in some of them. Some we have, strings we have, other like standard INT we haven't. So the if you take a look at my patches, a lot of them are just me including a header. Yet when I look at all the things that I've built, a lot of the stuff's broken. Um, all the apps that require on PNG don't. Yeah, the system doesn't have enough memory to run them. At least that's what PNG reports back. Can't build wine. It's got some memory issue. Apache doesn't really work that well. Samba wants to have write access to the. A lot of these apps want to create hard links sometimes to the temp directory. That may be the case with Samba. So you can't have a Samba with any security. You know, a lot of little things like that, and they add up. There always seems to be some surprise where you go over this huge mountain of work and tediousness to build a package, and then you find that the keyboard doesn't work. So you got to find out something else to figure that out. And it becomes a really tedious and thankless, project. And sometimes you're not going to have time to, you're not going to have time to quality control test all these things. You load them up to Haiku and hope you've given the community what they want, coming out of an environment where if you build something, it's going to work. Well, it's not really that way in Haiku. And I've used a lot of tricks to get these things to build, but those tricks aren't damaging tricks. Setting out the math library isn't going to cause something to not be able to load the ping library. It's a completely different things. And I'm speaking from experience right now. Once we actually fully release Haiku with this package manager in place and the read-only, it should be a public announcement of how developer adverse we are. That's my opinion. Additionally, the few discussions that have taken place that I've seen about when developers come by and they want something, or they're asking about a certain feature that's important to them to get something to build, and they've really worked hard just to get to where they have, the adverse reactions from the community has not helped. I'll just say that. I think that the animosity between Haiku and Haiku Inc. is unfortunate, but it's a direct result of take the package manager for example. So we made the package manager. We were kind of stuck in our own world there. We just we did everything we thought was going to be cool about a package manager, but we didn't think about the implications on the outside. Well, that's you hardly could blame that. But then once the feedback started coming in, and they were just ignored and treated like attacks upon the project rather than honest appeals to fix things so we can move forward. I think that really hurt the project. But for me, it's not going to be worth my time to sit here and try to build stuff and actually see it build only when I try it to find out that either the system can't handle it, or in some cases, even the tool set that I'm using here and there, it's it was really made initially under the assumption that the binaries that are built in the system are going to end up, and this is in a subtle way. I know that the package source is an ingenious project, and it does a lot of ingenious things, so don't get me wrong. But there still are some times when people make the make files, they forget. It's easy to forget that that there's going to be other platforms that don't actually have their installed binaries landing in the same place as where the package source binaries go, and that is the case with Haiku. It really is if the it would be very good for people that use package source as a stress test for their goal of portability, which I applaud, um, to try building a lot of packages like I have, and to see where things go wrong. Sometimes it happens when, say, whenever any package links with Haiku's Mesa, um, that's that's a sign that it's gone wrong, because what doesn't make sense about package sources, you can't build any of these packages even though Mesa is installed in the system until such time as you build it in package source. But then when it ends up building, it'll build against a library that's in a completely different location than where the binary has the library embedded to go. And there are some instances where we're not including the build link 3 in the recipe. There's a number of them, and I haven't even identified them all. But I'm now noticing that it's a chronic problem where there's it's missing, say, the build link for the JPEG library, as it happened with ScumVM. And that is a portability issue. If you want the package source to be actually as portable as envisioned, that it's a really tedious process to get all those little build links in there to match up with everything it wants to link in a makefile. And then managing a transition from getting away from the system and into this. Really, package source should be like a walled castle. I know there's something called the built-in, and there's so many features in package source. Actually, it's hard to know what you're supposed to know. It's not really a fault. It's a really good tool set. And there's some really big giants of open source in that project. And I would have never in my life been able to get as far as I have had I not used build link transform. All the things that are used rarely and once in a while in NetBSD, but that are nice features from package source, are used almost constantly. Almost practically every build is going to include some kind of, substitution classes, substitute classes, or the building anyway. But so I've learned a lot. So if you want to learn, also another positive thing to say is, if you want to learn a lot about building stuff, bootstrap your package source and try to start building in Haiku. You will learn a lot if you're really serious about it. And that's what I've tried to do. Involved with the project for a while, or been around, or been watching it for a while. I don't know how involved I've been until recently. And recently I've been here because right now I think that the project's in a serious condition. I think that doesn't have as many interested people in it as it needs to be able to develop into something that the end user is going to want to use and be able to use on a day-to-day basis and mature. And I'm quite frankly going to say that I believe that happened when we made part of the file system read-only. And I think it needs to go away. I think we need to be more responsive to the developers, and if the developers say they need to use a directory, give it to them. That's my suggestion for the project to grow. I also think the project will shrink if we don't. So and I also get the idea or the feeling that people just don't like to hear suggestions from the end users, and it feels adverse. It feels cliquey. It feels too divided. It feels like you're for us or against us, and it feels like the project doesn't have an attitude in which, if someone differs from your opinion, it means they're against the project. And I don't see how that's really actually true. I've tried to do all this stuff for the project. I've put up all the patches for the project, or for people to be able to use Haiku and have more members of the public be able to use the OS. I think we've departed from our original purpose, and once we stop listening to the end users and the developers, and we're just going to do what we're going to do, and anything counter to that is an attack, then that's a formula for the project to go down, and I don't want to see it go down. So that's my opinion. I'll probably be back. I'm kind of enjoying learning stuff from it, but I don't know how long I'm gonna be doing this, and I may just move on, actually. Because at the end of the day, I have an operating system which I could use every single app that I've tried to build and pulled my hair out over very easily. Just download it, just use it, enjoy it, and not have side effects take place in the system. I can browse the network, I can print. I'm just waiting, and I've been waiting for years for the Wine project to get to the point where I could run a lot of my Windows apps, and then I have an OS that I want to use. I have write access to the operating system if I need to do something special. Say if I want to try to get WordPerfect from 10 years ago to run, I can go in there. I've got LDD. I can use hard links. There's a lot of things that I can do, and there's not much that I can't do, except for run specific apps. I want Haiku to get there, but I don't see it happening because of what I perceive, and just conversations that I've read and participated in. I've come to the conclusion that no matter what the end users are saying, it's not falling on deaf ears, and it's just end user requests to become annoyances rather than. And I feel that's unfortunate. And I've also perceived there's been some adversity towards people that have actually been trying to help the operating system go somewhere. And that's unfortunate too. So I hope, unfortunately also, there hasn't been enough donations, and the money that's been spent, this last bit on the package manager, I think, was a disaster. We basically put money into strangling out developers, and that trend has to reverse, I think, or it's going to go nowhere. But the main issue is that it's too difficult to build things by hand. Package source is fairly well suited, but it still needs a lot of work as far as in the make files to get things to build right and link with the right things. There was a lot of patching on the inner workings of a lot of these applications just to deal with eccentricities of Haiku, such as not having hard links, not having certain directories, and all that could be easily remedied if we just decided that we were not going to be purists and we're going to be more pragmatic and allow those directories to be creative and maybe abandon the B file system. It doesn't make any sense to have a file system that has a root directory that's called boot if you're trying to get POSIX apps to work. I would also fix up the headers. I would add all those unholy variables and redirects that we've refused to do, and add write access. I would enhance the B file system to be able to handle hard links. I would enhance the B file system to have just a root directory that's just a slash. We wouldn't have it called boot anymore. And that's what I would do, and then I think we would have a chance. But if we don't do that, I don't think we have a chance. I don't see many people writing applications to run natively in the B API. If we could figure that out, if we get more people doing that, then the POSIX stuff won't be that important anymore. But if the POSIX stuff remains important, then we ought to do things to allow the POSIX stuff to run. Otherwise, we'll have a system that nothing runs, and there's no point. And I want there to be a point to this. I've joked around a lot, probably too much, but I think people at times have really overreacted to that, as if and at other times it just seems like some of the noisiest people complain about the smallest amounts of noise for almost no reason. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say for now. I might come back to a few more videos. if I find stuff. But it seems like I keep finding things, and sometimes I have it half worked out, sometimes I don't. But I try to pass on the information that I find if I think it's important or might be helpful to somebody. If I do make a serious effort once again, it's probably not going to be till summer. I'm debating whether I want to get involved with the package source project because I don't even know if I have enough time. There's just way too many patches and way too many recipes for me to realistically submit those. And some of them, given just the numbers of packages I was trying to build and the short amounts of time I was doing it, some of those patches are going to violate the other. A small amount are going to violate the other OS's parameters, and I would never want to fork package source because I have a lot of respect for it. But my stuff's up at Git if anybody wants to do anything with it or take a part of it. But it's going to take a slow process. It's a very slow planned process at this level of end users to get very well integrated into package source. And it was going to take more work to get Haiku Porter fully working. I was almost able to catch up to Haiku Porter in 6 months. It makes a big difference when you don't have to make recipes, and especially when you don't have to make the recipes be absolutely engineering perfect to run. So that's all I have to say. I mean, I'm glad the people that are working on the OS they're getting experience from it. I hope it goes somewhere. I hope to come back in 2 years and say, wow, or a year, and say, wow, this is really fucking moved, and I never thought it would be this, and look at all these packages they're building, and wow, I really wish it'll turn out that way. And I would like to be a part of the effort to get there. But I don't want to be a part of an effort that locks out users or doesn't allow users to do everything they want to do with their operating system. That means having write access to it, which is one of the reasons why, amongst also me only knowing how to use shell scripting and not Python, that is one reason why I chose to use package source. And it's because I feel it's giving the end user the choice as to what they want to do with the operating system rather than telling the end user what they're going to do with their operating system is in the spirit of open source. The other way around is not in the spirit of open source, in my opinion. Whether the intentions are good and you're wanting to think for the end user and take care of problems for the end user, it doesn't really always come across that way because you never really can do all those things. And it's just impossible. It's just a matter of numbers. And so when problems do come up as a result of trying to take care of stuff for other people, making choices for other people, when that case that you never imagined would happen actually happens, it rubs the end users the wrong way. And then when they come back and they ask you to change and you don't change it, that really, you lost. You've lost the end users. And if you're making the operating system for end users to use, you're not going to want to have those kind of things happen. But, so those are my suggestions, basically. Enhance the headers, put the unholy stuff in there, redirect, cheat, look at all the other operating systems, see what they got on their headers, and enhance those. Put hard links in the file system, open up the base, and give people write access to it. And I think you'll find there'll be a renaissance. And make the recipe process for the Haiku ports more liberal. So people could make a package, and if someone else wants to dot the I's and cross the T's, they can do that, but at least you'll have a something that'll work. More people contributing to it because it'll be easier to contribute to it, less time consuming, less requiring study. On the package source end, or whatever, it's very important to be careful to iron out what's linked up. I would also enhance shared memory tremendously. I would encourage more kernel work. I would even consider using a different kernel. If we're not going to get shared memory out of this kernel, it's nice to have it, but as a tribute to B Inc., which we all respect and we all love, but if we're not going to be able to use some of our hardware, we're not going to have shared memory, we're not going to be able to build packages, end users are going to do without. We're going to have less end users, we're less capable of fulfilling the purpose that we want to fulfill. Now, whether other projects have failed before, the main reason is because of the X window. And we have the X window. And so we should move with that. Now, I don't know that if I were able to just make choices, which will never happen, if I would, I weigh towards the idea of renaming Library Mesa, but that Haiku supplies to something else, because we're linking different things to it. But on the other hand, what I would do is I would advertise some of the features that it provides. And that's the ability to run some apps without having to build the next window. I would work on enhancing that technology so X11 isn't necessary. And I would get the documentation to developers as to how to build traditional X11 apps and have them run inside of Haiku, if at all possible. Those are my suggestions. Those are my ideas. It's been a marathon for about 6 months here. I hope I've been able to actually contribute positively in some ways. But who knows? Who knows if this will be heard or watched or whatever. Seems as though whenever I say something controversial, everyone wants to watch it. But what really matters is how things are working. It doesn't matter what I say. What I say is just, doesn't really change how the operating system works or doesn't work. But it is feedback as to what might help make things go better. So, there you are.